Standing at my 5-year-old son's funeral, listening to my own family destroy me with their words, I kept my mouth shut. The funeral parlor smelled like lilies and old wood polish, that suffocating sweetness that would forever remind me of the worst day of my life. My sister Francine leaned toward our cousins packed into the third row, her black dress pristine and pressed, nothing like the wrinkled one I'd thrown on that morning because I couldn't stop crying long enough to iron anything. She never could handle being a single mom, Francine said, her voice carrying that fake whisper designed to be overheard. Remember when she called me crying because Tommy wouldn't sleep for 3 nights straight? She was completely falling apart even then. My mother Loretta nodded from her seat in the front row, turning slightly so the entire congregation could hear her response. Some women just aren't fit to raise children. I told her after Wayne left that she should move back home, let us help properly raise those kids. But no, she always insisted she could do it all alone. And now look where we are. The words hit me like physical blows, each one precisely aimed at the guilt already eating me alive. I stood there in complete silence, my hands trembling as I gripped my daughter Penny's small hand. She was wearing the black dress we'd bought just yesterday because nothing in her closet seemed appropriate for saying goodbye to her little brother. Her palm was sweaty against mine, and I could feel her shifting from foot to foot the way she did when she had something important to say. My brother David stood near Tommy's small white coffin, playing the role of supportive uncle perfectly. His hand rested on his wife's shoulder while she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. He'd even given a speech earlier about how precious life was, how quickly accidents could happen, how we all needed to hold our children tighter. The whole room had cried, everyone except Penny. Pastor Jerome was moving toward the podium to conclude the service when Penny suddenly pulled her hand from mine. She walked forward with the kind of determination I'd only seen when she decided to learn to ride her bike without training wheels. Her Mary Janes clicked against the hardwood floor, each step echoing in the hushed space. "Pastor Jerome," she said, her young voice cutting through the chapel like a blade through silk. She stood directly in front of the coffin, her small frame dwarfed by the white flowers surrounding it. Should I tell everyone what Uncle David did to Tommy in the bathroom? The entire funeral parlor went dead silent. Not the respectful quiet of mourning, but the absolute stillness that comes when everyone stops breathing at the same time. I watched my brother David's face drain of all color, his hand sliding off his wife's shoulder as he took an involuntary step backward. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Francine's fake whisper died in her throat. My mother's tissue fluttered to the floor. Aunt Dolores, who'd been fanning herself with the program, froze mid-motion. Even the funeral director, standing discreetly by the door, went rigid. "Penny, sweetheart," David finally managed to say, his voice cracking on her name. But Penny wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me, her 8-year-old eyes holding a truth so terrible that everyone in that room felt the temperature drop. I knew in that moment that everything was about to change. The story they'd all believed, the accident they'd all accepted, the blame they'd all placed on me for being a neglectful single mother who couldn't protect her child. None of it was real. And my daughter, my brave little girl who'd been silent for 3 days, was about to burn it all down. "Go ahead, baby," I heard myself say, my voice steady for the first time since I'd gotten that horrible phone call. "Tell them the truth." 3 days earlier, my life was controlled chaos, the kind every single parent knows intimately. Tuesday morning started at 5:30 a.m. when Tommy climbed into my bed, his dinosaur pajamas twisted around his small body, his breath smelling like the graham crackers he'd snuck before bedtime. "Mommy, is it morning yet?" he whispered directly into my ear, the way 5-year-olds do when they think they're being quiet. "Not yet, baby," I mumbled, pulling him against me. But he was already wiggling free, ready to start his day whether the sun agreed or not. By 6 a.m., our small apartment was fully alive. Penny sat at the kitchen table, already dressed in her favorite purple sweater, methodically working through her math homework she'd forgotten to finish the night before. She was like that, my Penny, organized in spurts, brilliant when she focused. Tommy was standing on his step stool at the counter, carefully pouring cereal into his bowl, milk splashing onto the counter despite his concentration. "I can do it myself," he announced proudly, even as Cheerios scattered across the floor. "You're doing great, buddy," I said, grabbing paper towels to clean up while simultaneously packing their lunches. Peanut butter and strawberry jam for Tommy, turkey and cheese for Penny, apple slices for both, and those little packets of goldfish crackers they loved. My phone rang at 6:45. The hospital. Nancy, the shift supervisor, sounded desperate. "Nadine, I know it's your day off, but Maria just called in with a family emergency. Car accident. We're already down 2 nurses in the ER and there's a multi-vehicle collision coming in. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't critical." I looked at my kids. Tommy had jelly on his chin, grinning at something Penny was saying about her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. My regular babysitter, Ashley, had texted me at 10 p.m. last night that she had the flu. My backup, the elderly Mrs. Chen next door, was visiting her daughter in Seattle. "Mom, I can watch Tommy," Penny offered, looking up from her homework. "I'm 8 now. That's practically a teenager." "Nice try, sweetheart," I said, ruffling her hair. "Give me a minute, Nancy." I scrolled through my contacts, my mind racing through possibilities. My mother would lecture me for an hour about proper planning before watching them. Francine would do it, but hold it over me for months. Then I thought of David. David lived in one of those suburban houses that looked like it came from a catalog. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a kitchen island bigger than my entire kitchen. He worked from home on Tuesdays, something about remote real estate consultations being the future of the business. His twins, Jason and Jeremy, were 7, right between Penny and Tommy's ages. "Of course I'll watch them," David said when I called. His voice was warm, dependable. The big brother voice I remembered from childhood when he'd chase away the monsters under my bed. "Bring them over. The twins are always asking when their cousins can visit. We'll make a day of it." "You're a lifesaver," I said, already mentally calculating the drive time. Tommy just had his birthday last week, and he's been extra hyper since all that cake and excitement. 5 years old, David chuckled. "I remember when the twins were that age. Pure energy. Don't worry about a thing. We've got that new playground set in the backyard. I'll tire him out." I threw together their backpacks while Penny helped Tommy find his shoes, the red ones with the Velcro straps he insisted on wearing everywhere. Tommy's Iron Man action figure went in the front pocket because he couldn't go anywhere without it. Penny packed her chapter book and her colored pencils, always preferring quiet activities, even at her cousin's house. The drive to David's took 22 minutes. Tommy sang the entire way, a made-up song about dragons and pizza that somehow made perfect sense to him. Penny joined in on the chorus, something about flying cheese and pepperoni wings. These were the moments I lived for, the silly, beautiful chaos of my children just being children. David met us at the door, already dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt even though he was working from home. That was David, always put together, always ready for the day. He scooped Tommy up immediately, making him squeal with delight. "Uncle David, guess what? I can count to 100 now." 100? That's impossible. "No way you're that smart already," David teased, carrying Tommy inside while Penny followed with their backpacks. "Be good for Uncle David," I said, kissing Tommy's forehead as he wiggled in David's arms. His hair smelled like the baby shampoo he still insisted on using because he liked the bottle shape. "Mommy will be back before dinner." "Bring pizza," Tommy demanded, already distracted by the sound of his cousins coming down the stairs. That was the last time I saw my baby boy alive, standing there in David's perfect foyer, his arms wrapped around his uncle's neck, his gap-toothed smile bright with excitement for the day ahead. If I had known, if I had even suspected, I would have called in sick to the hospital. I would have held him forever. I would have never let go. The call came at 2:47 p.m. I was adjusting an IV drip for an elderly patient who kept calling me by her daughter's name when Sharon, another nurse, grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. Her face was white, her eyes wide with the kind of panic that only comes with truly bad news. "Nadine, you need to take this call. Now it's about Tommy." The walk to the nurse's station felt like miles. My hands were already shaking when I picked up the phone. David's voice was strange, too calm, like he was reading from a script he'd rehearsed. "There's been an accident. Tommy was taking a bath. I only stepped out for a minute to answer the door, a delivery that needed signing. When I came back, he'd slipped under the water. The paramedics are here. We're going to St. Mary's." I don't remember dropping the phone. I don't remember running through the hospital corridors or how I got to my car. The 20-minute drive to St. Mary's exists only in fragments. A red light I may have run, the parking garage gate that seemed to take forever to open, the sound of my own voice saying, "No, no, no," over and over. By the time I reached the emergency room, they'd already pronounced him dead. Dr. Patel, whom I'd worked with for 3 years, couldn't look me in the eye when he said it. Drowning. He was under too long. There was nothing we could do. They let me see him. Tommy looked like he was sleeping, except his lips were too blue and his skin was too cold. I held him anyway, rocking him like I did when he was a baby, singing his favorite lullaby about mockingbirds and diamond rings. A nurse, I didn't know, had to eventually peel my arms away. Detective Russo appeared within an hour, a tired-looking man with kind eyes and a notebook he kept checking. He interviewed David first, then me, then David again. The story never changed. Tommy had been playing outside with the twins, gotten muddy, asked for a bath. David ran the water, helped him in, made sure it was only a few inches deep. Then the doorbell rang. UPS delivery requiring signature for a package David had been expecting. He was gone maybe 3 minutes, 4 at most. When he returned, Tommy was face down in the water. "These things happen more than you'd think," Detective Russo said gently. "Young children can drown in less than 2 inches of water. It's silent, quick, nobody's fault." But Penny hadn't said a word since I'd picked her up from David's house. When I arrived, she was sitting on the front porch steps, David's wife, Melissa, beside her, trying to get her to drink some juice. Penny just stared straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap like a much older child. She held my hand on the drive home but wouldn't speak. At dinner, she pushed her food around her plate. At bedtime, she went without argument, but I heard her, crying through the wall. When I went to comfort her, she'd pretend to be asleep, her breathing too controlled to be real. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of funeral arrangements and family gatherings. My apartment filled with casseroles I couldn't eat and flowers that made me sick. But worse than the grief was the judgment disguised as sympathy. My mother arrived the morning after Tommy died, taking one look at my apartment before launching into her critique. "This place is so small, Nadine. Children need space to run and play safely. In a proper house with a proper yard, maybe this wouldn't have happened." At the wake, she cornered me near the coffee station while I was trying to avoid everyone's pitying looks. "This is what happens when you insist on doing everything alone. If you'd remarried after Wayne left, if you'd given these children a proper father figure, maybe Tommy would still be here. A man would have known better than to leave a child alone in a bath." Francine was even worse, gathering our cousins around her like an audience. We all saw how overwhelmed she was. Remember last month when she forgot Tommy's preschool pickup? The teacher had to call her twice, and that time Penny had to remind her about her parent-teacher conference. Some people just can't handle the pressure of single parenthood. "Working those long shifts," Aunt Dolores added, shaking her head dramatically. "Leaving them with whoever's available, always scrambling for childcare. We all knew something like this would happen eventually. That poor baby paid the price for his mother's choices." They spoke about me like I wasn't standing right there, like I was invisible in my own grief. Each word was a knife, confirming every fear I'd ever had about not being enough. Not enough money for a bigger place, not enough time to be there every moment, not enough of a complete family to keep my children safe. David played his part perfectly, the grieving uncle who'd tried his best. He told the story again and again, his voice breaking at just the right moments. His wife Melissa stood by him, rubbing his back, telling everyone how destroyed he was. "He keeps blaming himself," she said tearfully. "But how could he have known? It was just a terrible, tragic accident." The morning of the funeral, I woke at 4 a.m. to find Penny sitting at the foot of my bed, still in her pajamas, watching me sleep. The darkness outside made her face look older than 8 years, shadowed with something heavy she'd been carrying alone. "How long have you been there, baby?" I asked, sitting up and pulling her close. "A while," she whispered into my shoulder. "Mommy, I need to tell you something about Tommy." My heart stopped. In the 3 days since his death, she'd barely spoken 20 words. Now her voice carried an urgency that made my skin prickle. I clicked on the bedside lamp. soft yellow light filling the room where Tommy's toys still lay scattered in the corner. Somehow, couldn't bring myself to move them yet. "What is it, sweetheart?" Penny pulled back to look at me directly, her brown eyes serious in a way that reminded me of myself at her age, the day I'd had to tell my teacher about the bruises on my friend's arms. "Uncle David didn't go answer the door." The words hung in the air between us. I could hear my own heartbeat loud and fast. "Penny, what do you mean?" When we were at Uncle David's house, the twins were playing video games in the basement. I wanted to read my books somewhere quiet, so I went upstairs to the guest room. But then I heard water running in the bathroom and Tommy laughing, so I went to see if I could help give him his bath. I like helping with Tommy. She paused, twisting the hem of her pajama top between her fingers. I wanted to push, to demand she tell me everything immediately, but I forced myself to wait, to let her find the words at her own pace. The bathroom door was closed, but not all the way. I could see through the crack by the hinges. Uncle David was in there with Tommy. At first, Tommy was playing with his bath toys, making his dinosaur attack the rubber ducky like always. But then Uncle David got angry about something. He grabbed Tommy's shoulders. My stomach turned to ice. Grabbed him how? Hard. Tommy started crying. Not regular crying, Mommy. Scared crying. The kind when he has bad dreams. And Uncle David kept saying, "Stop fighting. Just stop fighting. You need to learn." Then he pushed Tommy's head under the water. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. But Penny kept talking, her voice steady like she'd practiced these words 100 times in her head. Tommy came back up coughing and crying, and Uncle David did it again, longer this time. Tommy was hitting the water with his hands, splashing everywhere. I wanted to run in and stop him, but I was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. Then it got quiet, really, really quiet. Uncle David pulled Tommy up one more time, but Tommy wasn't moving anymore. Penny opened her small fist. Inside was a button, silver with an anchor design, distinctive and expensive looking. This was on the bathroom floor when Uncle David finally let me in to see Tommy. He'd changed his shirt by then, but I recognized the button. It's from the shirt he was wearing when we got there. The one Aunt Melissa bought him for his birthday, but he told the police he never went in the bathroom. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to David's house and tear him apart with my bare hands. But looking at my daughter's terrified face, I knew I had to be smarter than my rage. "Why didn't you tell me before, baby?" Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. Uncle David saw me in the hallway after. He said if I told anyone what I thought I saw, everyone would blame you. He said they'd take me away from you because you left us with him. He said it was your fault for going to work and I'd end up in foster care. I didn't want to lose you too, Mommy. I pulled her against me so tight, feeling her small body shake with sobs she'd been holding for 3 days. My own brother had murdered my baby and then threatened my daughter into silence. The same brother who'd taught Tommy to throw a baseball last summer, who'd carried him on his shoulders at the zoo, who'd been there at the hospital the day he was born. "Listen to me," I said, pulling back to look at her face. "Nothing that happened is your fault. Nothing. And no one is taking you away from me. Ever." I thought about our options. I could call Detective Russo right now, but it would be Penny's word against David's. A traumatized 8-year-old against a respected real estate agent with no criminal record. I needed to be strategic. "We're going to the funeral," I said quietly. "And you're going to be brave. If you feel ready, if you feel safe, you can tell the truth. But only if you're ready. I'll be right there with you. No matter what happens, we face it together." Penny nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. "Tommy would want everyone to know the truth, wouldn't he?" "Yes, baby, he would." We spent the next 2 hours getting ready in silence, but it was a different silence than before. This one was full of purpose. I helped Penny into her black dress, braided her hair the way she liked it, and pinned the button inside my jacket pocket. Evidence, truth. Justice for my baby boy who'd never see 6 years old. The funeral service had been dragging on for 20 minutes. Pastor Jerome stood at the podium, his voice rolling through practiced platitudes about God's plan and mysterious ways. The chapel was packed, every pew filled with family, friends from work, parents from Tommy's preschool. They'd all come to mourn a tragic accident to support the poor single mother who'd lost her baby to a moment's inattention. I sat in the front row, Penny pressed against my side, her hand gripping mine like an anchor. Behind us, I could hear my family's whispers growing bolder as the service continued. They thought grief had broken me, made me deaf to their cruel commentary. "She never could handle being a single mom," Francine said to our cousins, her voice carrying that particular tone of false concern she'd perfected over the years. "Remember when she called me crying because Tommy wouldn't sleep? She was completely falling apart even then. Some people just aren't meant to raise children alone. Some women just aren't fit to raise children at all," my mother added, loud enough for 3 rows to hear. I offered to help so many times, told her to move back home after Wayne left, but she was too proud, too stubborn, and now look where we are. That poor baby. I felt Penny's entire body go rigid beside me. Her hand tightened on mine, and I could feel her trembling with rage that matched my own. She looked up at me, and in her 8-year-old eyes, I saw a decision being made. Without warning, she pulled her hand free and stood up. The whispers stopped. Heads turned as my daughter walked to the front of the room, her small feet steady on the carpeted aisle. She stopped directly in front of Tommy's white coffin, her back straight, her chin raised. "Pastor Jerome," she said, her young voice cutting through the chapel with startling clarity. "Should I tell everyone what Uncle David did to Tommy in the bathroom?" The silence was immediate and absolute. Someone gasped. A hymnal hit the floor. David shot to his feet from his place in the second row, his face draining of color so fast I thought he might faint. "Penny, sweetheart, you're confused," David said, his voice too high, too fast. "You're grieving. Children don't understand what they're saying when they're upset." "I'm not confused." Penny turned to face the congregation, her eyes finding David's. "I was in the hallway. I heard everything. Uncle David was in the bathroom with Tommy. Tommy was crying and saying, 'No, no, no,' and Uncle David kept pushing him under the water. He said, 'Stop fighting. Just stop fighting.'" Melissa, David's wife, stood up slowly, her hand covering her mouth. "David, what is she talking about?" Penny reached into her pocket and pulled out the button, holding it up so everyone could see it catch the light. "This is from Uncle David's shirt. It was on the bathroom floor. He lied to everyone. He lied to the police. He said he was at the door, but he wasn't. He was in the bathroom the whole time, holding Tommy under the water." "You're lying," David shouted, stepping into the aisle. His hands were clenched into fists, his whole body shaking. "She's a child. She doesn't know what she's saying. She's traumatized." I stood up then, my voice steady and clear. "Then take a polygraph test. Right now. Detective Russo is here." I pointed to the back of the room where the detective had been sitting quietly, observing everything. "He can arrange it today. If you have nothing to hide, prove it." David's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "This is ridiculous. I don't have to prove anything to anyone. It was an accident. Tommy slipped." "Then why did you lie about answering the door?" Penny asked, her voice smaller now but still strong. "Daddy taught me about doorbell cameras before he left. He said they record everything. Your house has one. It will show if anyone came to the door." That's when David broke, not with a confession, but with action. He lunged toward Penny. Whether to grab her or the button, I'll never know, because I moved faster than I've ever moved in my life, pulling her behind me. But David wasn't trying to reach us anymore. He was pushing past his wife, past my mother, whose face had gone gray with shock, trying to get to the exit. "David Walker, we need you to come with us for questioning," Detective Russo said, already moving to intercept him. Another officer I hadn't noticed before stepped out from the back entrance, blocking David's escape route. "This is insane," David screamed, but his voice had gone shrill with panic. "You're going to believe a child? A confused little girl who doesn't understand what she saw?" "We're going to investigate," Detective Russo said calmly. "Starting with your doorbell camera and your neighbor's security footage. Then we're going to re-examine the autopsy report, particularly the bruising on Tommy's shoulders that was initially attributed to CPR attempts." As they led David away, his legs seemed to give out. The officers had to practically carry him. Melissa sank into the pew, sobbing. My mother stood frozen, her hand pressed to her chest. Francine's face had gone white as paper. The chapel erupted in chaos then, voices rising, people standing, some crying, others shouting questions. But I only had eyes for Penny, my brave girl who'd found the courage to speak the truth in front of everyone who'd doubted us. I dropped to my knees and pulled her close, both of us crying now, holding each other in front of Tommy's coffin while the world exploded around us. The autopsy was re-examined within 48 hours. Dr. Patricia Kellner, the medical examiner who performed the second review, found what the first examination had overlooked or dismissed. The bruising on Tommy's shoulders showed a distinct pattern. Adult finger marks consistent with forceful restraint. The water in his lungs contained soap residue at levels suggesting multiple submersions. His fingernails had skin cells under them that matched David's DNA, evidence of Tommy fighting back against his uncle. The doorbell camera told its own story. No delivery truck appeared on David Street that morning. No uniformed driver walked up his pristine driveway. The timestamp showed nobody at his door during the entire window when Tommy drowned. David's neighbor's security footage confirmed it. The street was empty except for a jogger who passed by without stopping. 2 weeks after the funeral, David confessed. He sat in an interrogation room, his expensive lawyer beside him, and admitted what he'd done. Tommy had been playing with the twins' iPad and accidentally dropped it in the toilet while trying to take it to the bathroom with him. The screen cracked. The device was ruined. It was a small thing, a stupid thing, the kind of accident that happens with 5-year-olds every day. I just wanted to teach him a lesson about being careful with other people's things, David said in the recorded confession I later heard during the trial. I only meant to scare him, to hold him under for a second so he'd understand consequences. But he kept fighting, kept splashing, and I got angrier. He needed to learn respect. He needed to understand that actions have consequences. He killed my baby over an iPad, a thing that could be replaced for a few $100s. Tommy's life ended because he acted like what he was, a 5-year-old boy who made a mistake. David got 25 years to life. The judge called it a betrayal of the most sacred trust when an uncle murders his nephew. During the sentencing, David's own twins testified that their father had held them underwater before when they'd misbehaved, though never long enough to cause serious harm. They'd been too scared to tell anyone. Child Protective Services got involved. Melissa filed for divorce and sole custody within a month. The family that had been so quick to blame me for being an inadequate single mother went silent. My mother tried to apologize one evening, showing up at my apartment with a casserole in tears. I was wrong, she said, standing in my doorway because I wouldn't let her in. I was so wrong about everything. You're an amazing mother. Penny is brave because you raised her to be brave. You believed I was negligent enough to cause my son's death, I replied, my voice calm but final. You announced it at his funeral. That's not something an apology can fix. Francine sent text messages I deleted without reading. Aunt Dolores mailed a card I threw away unopened. They'd shown me who they were in my darkest moment, and I believed them. But the person who amazed me most was Penny. After the arrest, after the confession, after everything settled into our new horrible normal, she came to me one night while I was sitting in Tommy's room, holding his favorite dinosaur. "Mommy, I was scared to tell at first," she said, climbing into my lap even though she was getting too big for it. "Uncle David said if I told anyone, everyone would blame you. He said they'd take me away from you because you left us with him. He said it was your fault for going to work." I held her so tight I worried I might hurt her. "You saved us, baby. You got justice for Tommy. You were braver than all the adults in that room." "I didn't save him, though," she whispered into my shoulder. "I stood in that hallway and watched and didn't stop it." "You were 8 years old facing a grown man. There was nothing you could have done except exactly what you did. Tell the truth when you felt safe enough to do it." We moved to a different state 6 months later. New city, new start, away from the whispers and the memories on every corner. Penny went to therapy twice a week, then once a week, then once a month. I went too, learning to live with grief that would never fully leave and guilt that wasn't mine to carry. We keep Tommy's picture on the mantle in our new living room, the one from his 5th birthday party, his face covered in chocolate cake, smiling that gap-toothed smile that made everyone laugh. Sometimes people ask me about being a single mother, about how hard it must be. I tell them the truth. It is hard. But not because I'm incapable or unfit like my family believed. It's hard because I have to be everything for my daughter while carrying the weight of the son I lost. It's hard because trust doesn't come easy when your own brother murdered your child. But Penny taught me something at Tommy's funeral. She taught me that even when the entire world is against you, even when your own family believes the worst about you, one voice speaking the truth can change everything. She taught me that bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right despite the terror. Every night when I tuck Penny in, she says the same thing. We're still a family, Mommy. Smaller, but stronger. She's right. We are stronger. We survived the unthinkable. And somewhere, somehow, I know Tommy is proud of us both. His death wasn't meaningless because his truth was told. Justice was served. And his big sister made sure the world knew what really happened to Tommy Walker, age 5, who deserved so much better than the uncle who killed him over a broken iPad. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes to the complexities of family tragedy and the courage it takes to speak truth, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in their struggles. Your comments mean everything to me, and they help create a community where we can support each other through life's darkest moments. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Every week, I share stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit and the power of truth. Thank you for being here, for listening to Tommy's story, and for being part of this journey.